Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are continuing the top 120 episodes, part 4, where we just talk about our favorite episodes out of those 327. When will we stop? I don't know, maybe on 326. We're just having too much fun. So before we keep going, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I started watching Supernatural in season 3. I started writing fanfic in 2012. I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast So Get This, the lore of Supernatural fanfic on Spotify, and I love talking about Supernatural.
Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I've been watching Supernatural since that very first episode.
And I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. So, top 120 episodes. We're really just talking about our favorites. And no particular order, no particular sequence of seasons. So I'm going to toss out the one that we watched in the watch party Monday night with the Supernatural TFWNC group, and that's Ask Jeeves. Now, this is basically a monster of the week. It's Clue with the Supernatural cast. You've got the rope and the knife and the candlestick and the revolver.
And the
cougars. And cougars. Poor Sammy. The cougars. Who come to their own conclusion on why the Winchesters are unavailable. Antiquers, yes, that must be it. But it's just a delicious little send-up of Agatha Christie and closed room murder mysteries and you know, an homage to Clue. And it's just it was a welcome tension break in season 10. It really doesn't contribute to the season arc other than a glimpse of the effect the Mark of Cain is starting to have on Dean. But for just a delicious little monster of the week, Ask Jeeves is delightful. So that's going to be what I kick tonight off with. Carole?
That one, it's so fun. I just really enjoy that one. All right, I'm going to go to the exact opposite mood with The End. The End in season 5. Zachariah is busy manipulating his little pawns that we know as Dean and Sam. And he has projected Dean into the future when the Croatoan virus has swept the nation. There's all kinds of feral people and children around and people fighting against the feral infected children and people. Dean is already horrified by what he wakes up and finds himself in. And after strenuously outracing some of the infected, he finds himself in a camp run by none other than Dean Winchester. So Dean is face to face with himself 5 years in the future. And it's not too pretty. It's already not a pretty future, but he finds himself, he's become cold, merciless, and he's appalled. He's appalled by himself and resolves, therefore, that they're going to do whatever they can to not have that future come to pass. So it's just the starkness and bleakness of the whole apocalyptic scenario is really, really well done. We have all kinds of great little scenes and clips that set the atmosphere of this episode up. We have this marvelous, marvelous scene. Jensen just kills it, where he's future Dean and now Dean. And he plays both. They're clearly very distinct. You don't confuse them at all. They're very you can see where future Dean has come from, but he is not like that anymore. And it's just really wonderfully, wonderfully acted. So for that alone, the episode is great, but it just really gives us so much and is a pivotal point in the story arc of why then Dean makes some of the next choices that he does. So meaty, enjoyable to watch dramatically, very exciting. Castiel has become a love guru.
Love
We have a
guru.
couple moments of humor in
Wait, a
there.
human love guru.
A human love guru. And we also have the introduction of that marvelous plot point known as Rhonda Hurley's panties
Mhm.
that Dean uses to convince his future self that he is really Dean because nobody else knew about them because he kind of liked wearing them.
And just remember that in the future, toilet paper, it's going to be worth more than gold.
Many a plot, many a PWP story has been written about Dean in the panties. So
yes. Well, and, we got the thigh rig. Future Dean in that thigh rig. Many a story has been written about as well.
Yep, that too. This was a really juicy episode.
and the behind the scenes story that at the beginning, now Dean is running through this apocalyptic city wasteland, and he's being chased by the infected. And the truth is that Jensen is such a fast runner. They had to reshoot that several times because he kept outrunning the camera equipment, and they had to tell him to slow down because he just took off. And there was the cameras and the zombies were in the background, so he had to learn to slow down so they could keep up with them. But yeah, that's just a terrific. It's not a particularly happy one, but we do also see that Zachariah thought he was going to get one response, and he got exactly the opposite response. Which, anytime Zachariah doesn't get what he wants, I'm happy.
And it's a very Dean-centric episode, but at the end, we also have the jewel that is Sam Winchester, Lucifer wearing Sam Winchester. And we have this marvelous little teeny tiny bit, but oh my gosh, does he play the heck out of it, where he is Lucifer in this ice cream suit, the white ice cream suit, and he's just absolutely chilling as he smiles benignly and then cracks future Dean's neck beneath his shoe.
Yeah.
So that also is a real gem.
And kudos to Jared for playing Samifer so excellently that we know when we're looking at him that that's not Sam. That's not our Sam anyhow. So yeah, kudos to everybody. Elektra.
Well, I can't resist. After the end comes in the beginning. Near the beginning of season 4, we've just met Castiel, and one of the things he does is he sends Dean back to 1973, and we circle back to before the pilot, and Dean meets his parents, and we get all sorts of great information about his folks who are just starting to get serious with each other. We learn Mary was the hunter and Dad wasn't. He helps Dad pick out baby because Dad was going to get that bus, the VW bus that we got to see in the Winchesters. And he gets to go after Azazel with the cult because they know where the cult is in 1973. And it sets in motion all of the events that are going to lead up to Sam ending up one of the special children. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really important episode as far as the series goes. But we also get all of that backfill and all of that cool information about, really, we wanted to know all that stuff. And then when we flash forward into the future, when Mary comes back, we know why she's a hunter. because she was raised in the life just like the boys were. And I've always just loved that. It was the first time we realized that angels could time travel, and that changed the game completely.
I also
Absolutely.
like that we found out why the boys were named what they were named.
Yeah, this is my dad, Samuel, and my mom, Dina. Yeah, that came in out of left field, at least for me.
Well, and when Dean first meets Mary, he doesn't know that that's going to be his mom. And then he's like, God, mom is a babe. I am so going to hell. And then she, kind of whoops his ass, which is also kind of fun. I'm going to go with Long Distance Call. This is a really underrated episode. It kind of gets glossed over. It's not a major arc episode. It's a monster of the week, but I liked it because it's got a very creepy atmosphere. The boys are people are getting phone calls from people who should be dead. And they're coming from this strange extension that when they track it down is actually an old-fashioned extension before, when they still used the exchange in phone numbers. Shouldn't have been used in 100 years. Calls are coming from that. And the calls are getting people to, in YouTube parlance, unalive themselves. So cease to exist. So the calls are destructive, and yet they shouldn't seem to be happening. Why are they happening? And then Dean starts getting calls ostensibly from John. And it shouldn't be John. It can't be John. But what if it is John? And so that whole tension of what if it's dad? It can't be dad, but what if it is? And then an unusual monster, a crocata, which I'd never heard of, but it does exist in legend and lore because Supernatural only uses quote unquote real monsters, ones that come from some sort of folklore or myth. And there are some memorable scenes at the phone company with the secondary character that helps them figure it out. And for just a neat little monster of the week episode, I really liked it. Sometimes you don't need big earth shattering major arc episodes. Sometimes it's just nice to hunt a monster and go boom. So that's mine there. Carole?
Now I'll go to the lighthearted end with Weekend at Bobby's. The Weekend at Bobby's is noteworthy also because that was, I believe, Jensen's directing debut.
Mm-hmm.
And he, pulled off a really snappy little episode. So he came out of the gate with a good one. Bobby is such a great character already. So we kind of got this peek into Bobby life. Like, here are all the phones lined up with the tape on them to say FBI, CIA, whatever, Homeland Security. So he knows what he's answering as. And we get how people are always coming to him. Rufus is like, I got a body to bury. I've got to find this thing. And then Jody shows up and she's like, and she's not our ally yet, or quasi. And so she's like, what is going on here? And in the meantime, he has an attractive lady neighbor who has moved in, who is trying to get him to have dinner with her and, maybe start dating or something, and presents him with a very, very lovely peach cobbler, which Bobby spends the entire episode trying to eat and never gets a bite. So we have a great little monster of the week, which, as Bobby disposes of this, it ruins his chance of ever dating that attractive lady neighbor, because she is now sprayed with blood as the monster went through her wood chipper. So there's just a ton of humor, cute little monster of the week, so much interplay that, we don't normally see because we're always seeing the Sam and Dean stuff. Well, here's Bobby's life regardless. And at one point, a couple of points, he's talking to Sam and Dean on the phone, and they're bickering and getting on his nerves, and he finally dresses them down, and they back off. He's like, you are not the only things in my world. And it's just really packaged so well, performed so well. It's delicious, as I'm sure the peach cobbler was, if anybody had ever gotten to try it.
Very well put.
Some of the best bits in there are the interplay between Bobby and Rufus as they argue over how to kill the monster, how many times you have to stab it, and whether or not it was blessed properly, and just the interplay between them fighting like an old married couple is just priceless.
Yeah, their chemistry was so good, and I would have loved to have seen so much more Bobby Rufus than we were able to get. I don't know if the actor was just unavailable, or if they couldn't fit more of that into the story arcs, but they were a gem together. And like you said, bickering like an old married couple, but so funny to see it through a hunter's lens. Well, I am going to pick for the next one, Time Is on My Side. Back to another monster of the week. I don't think that's one. I'm double checking that that's not one that we have done before. It isn't. So Time Is on My Side is the episode before Dean gets dragged away by the Hellhound. I'm blanking on the name of the episode. But it's the next to last episode of season 3. And so Sam is in panic mode, trying to save Dean any way he can. And he comes upon this reference to a Dr. Roberts, and that they can, maybe they can get to this guy. He's got this solution for immortality. And if Dean can't die, then he can't be dragged away to hell. And the rest for the wicked is the next episode. And so Dean is sure nothing is going to get him out of his deal, but he goes along with it. And it turns out that Dr. Roberts is immortal, but he has to keep getting replacement parts by killing people and taking eyes and noses and ears and livers, and whatever wears out, he has to sustainably source
Not too sustainably.
Responsibly is not the word I would have used there.
Locally.
There you go, locally sourced.
Yeah, locally. So he goes and harvests whatever he needs. And, Sam has this moment of clear panic and desperation when he's willing to go for it. Dean, you can do this. And he's like, I'd rather go to hell. This is terrible. I'm not going to do this. What are you thinking? And so I love that you have, first off, it's a pretty cool monster of the week, because he is really monstrous, and you do have that, well, what would you pay to live forever? But you do have that tension between Sam and Dean, where Sam has gotten to the point where he'll do anything to save Dean. And Dean still has enough presence of mind to go, but I won't do that, to misquote Meatloaf. He just, no, Sam. Now, there is some excellent fan fiction out there where they both go that route. And let me tell you, it's one of my favorite stories. But they don't do
one of the worst monsters in the world. A human.
Yeah.
And they're terrible.
So they put Dr. Roberts in a refrigerator and chain it up and bury him, which is pretty awful because he's going to be alive forever down there, which Supernatural keeps coming back to this idea of being buried alive. Dean digs his way out of the grave just 2 more episodes in the future. And then there's the Malak box. And somebody had a fixation about getting buried alive.
Immortal people. We're immortal creatures. What do you do with them? Other than put them in a sealed container, or a sealed container at the bottom of the ocean.
But so anyhow, that's my episode for this round. Carole?
Actually, I think it's Elektra's turn for that round.
Oh, Elektra?
Oh, gazing. How about Exodus?
Okay.
From season 13. Here we are in apocalypse world, and Jack finally gets to meet Dad. And things are not, great because, well, Lucifer. And Dean is trying to convince Gabriel maybe he wants to kill Lucifer, and that would be nice and neat and tidy, but Gabriel's a little weak. And Lucifer brought back Sam, so it's a little ethically ambiguous. And maybe they need Lucifer to help fight Michael, because Michael in Apocalypse World is kind of a badass. So it's all a little bit crumply. And meanwhile, on our side of the gate, you've got Rowena there just feeding the rift. Well, they are desperately trying to figure out what to do. And the answer becomes, well, we're taking everybody that's left back with us. And by the end of the episode, they have dragged all of the refugees, including the surprising Ketch, who's decided maybe he wants to be a good guy after all. And they managed to drag everybody else back. We lose Gabriel. We leave Lucifer and Michael to fight it out in the Rift Seals. It's really satisfying to have Lucifer somehow lose out again.
Mm-hmm. And be so surprised about it.
Well, and it's just so the AU storyline by that point had dragged on maybe quite a bit too long. First it was mom was lost, and then it was, and we're going to try and find her, and they went back there more than once to try and do it. And it's completely ridiculous that they could find her someplace that is the size pretty much of our world, where they haven't got access to an internet or any sort of magical way of finding her, and yet they did.
It's not even like she had an air tag on her.
They were pretty much walking like across states. So how they managed to pull it off is just insane. Yet they did. So kudos to them. But if they let it drag on any longer, you were going to start to really realize that they decided to walk from Ohio to Nebraska to find mom. And then they had to get back within 24 hours or the rift would close. So yeah, that storyline not greatly planned out by the writers, I don't think. But I really liked what was going on over there. I loved getting Bobby back after we'd missed him for so long, or a version of Bobby. And bringing back the hunters from that side was kind of cool.
Carole, how about you?
Well, I'm going to continue on with how we enjoyed the whole Bobby and Rufus thing and go with Safe House, season 11, episode 16. Safe House is this great, also monster of the week. It's a house. The house has a strange sigil, strange things are happening in it. And we end up in this dual storyline of being in the past with Bobby and Rufus dealing with the house with the sigil, and Sam and Dean in the present dealing with the house with the sigil. And the house with the sigil alone is a very good, creepy story. People are, Dean has to go into this in-between world and everything, but and it's very difficult to get him back, but of course they do because the show continued. But the gem of it is watching Bobby and Rufus, 20 years earlier being FBI agents, and Rufus is so snarky to the nosy next door neighbor, and Bobby is trying to smooth things over. And you see something about their bet with the whole Johnny Walker, is it the Blue Label, I think, the Johnny Walker Blue Label, and Bobby ends up with a bottle of it in his car. We don't entirely know what happened, but we see the kind of the genesis of that little thing. So watching it play out in the past, watching it play out in the future, the way the two pairs of hunters are mirroring each other, and just the byplay between Bobby and Rufus themselves, it makes it a really interesting, fun, creepy episode.
The Blue Label's the really expensive Johnny Walker.
Right.
Order of magnitude more than the other ones. If you want to drink blended scotch, that's a whole nother tale.
Well, I'm going to go for the real Ghostbusters. Now, this is where Sam and Dean get pulled into a supernatural convention at this haunted inn. Yeah, convention. And it's Becky who gets them there. She is dating Chuck. We don't know yet that Chuck is God. She steals his phone to get Sam and Dean there. And they walk in and see all these people cosplaying them and cosplaying the characters, the ghosts and the monsters, and quoting lines from the Carver Edlund books from, at each other. And so Sam and Dean are ready to kill somebody, mostly maybe Carver Edlund. And they run into one pair dressed up cosplaying as Sam and Dean. Of course, there's a supposedly fake murder mystery about a woman and 3 dead kids and all of this. But it turns out that there is a real ghost. There are real murders happening, and they get help from these 2 cosplayers who start out being kind of doofuses, but they realize that something bad is going on and they want to help, even though this is out of their wheelhouse and they're scared. And they really do help, even if it's digging up graves. And so it is a lovely little monster of the week. It's a very funny take on fandom and conventions without, being rude or looking down on it. There are just some brilliant moments and gags, but there's some genuinely scary moments. And the best part is at the end where Dean is talking to the 2 cosplayers and they said, no, you don't really understand the story. We fix copiers for a living, but Sam and Dean are heroes. And who wouldn't want a brother who would die for them? And you can just kind of see the light bulb go on in Dean's mind that he's never seen himself that way. And then we find out that the 2 cosplayers are actually together. And
together.
Yeah, so we're back with Antiquers again. But it's just, it's a wonderful episode that's got some scares. It's got a lot of humor. It's got a lot of in-jokes. And I could just watch that one over and over again.
And the ghost kids are super creepy. They're really
that part is done really well.
Yeah.
But you think this is just going to be funny, and then there is actually a really creepy part of it. And I love that, that you get more than you're expecting. And I love the 2 cosplayers. I don't think I have ever seen fan fiction of them going off together and giving up selling copiers or fixing copiers and let's go be hunters. And I think I would love to have seen Sam and Dean run into them somewhere down the line and go, yeah, we're the guys who you met back there. And we just decided to chuck it all and hunt monsters. So
behind a behind the scenes note on that is one of the couple, I believe was actually the writer on Television Without Pity who did all the Supernatural recaps.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he got to do that little part
cool
stuff. So that was fun.
Elektra, your turn.
How about Chris Angel is a douchebag? It's a season 4 episode that featured magicians, which is always a real favorite of mine, and Barry Bostwick, which is also a favorite of mine because Rocky Horror and 18 other things from the 80s. Spandex, what can I say? I love the idea of magicians, except one of them had a prop that enabled him to actually, do magic. I can do magic, but somebody has to die. It's just really, really cool. It took place in a location that was clearly a spoof off the magic. Oh God, what is it called? The Magician's Castle, I think, out in California. And the magicians really acted a lot like real magicians do. They were willing to talk some about their tricks, but not a whole lot about how things are done. And I think it was a particularly well-written one. I like the way the boys interacted with the magicians and actually, wanted to help them. And I found the whole thing just entertaining, funny, and a nice break from season 4, which was pretty, with the introduction of the angels, it got pretty intense. And that one actually had a lot of humor while people were, dropping dead every now and again. I'm sorry, I like my death interspersed with humor.
Well, and we also got a real insight at the end of the episode, because Dean has been very fatalistic, and Sam sees what happens with the two older magicians, and it pushes him back to Ruby. He was trying to be good. He was trying to do it Dean's way. And when he realizes that Dean doesn't think he's getting out of this alive, Sam's not about to stand for that. And so he's back with Ruby because he's trying to save Dean. And I thought it was one of those where you don't think the episode's going to tie into the bigger arcs of the season. And then all of a sudden, in the last 5 minutes, you get a whopper. And that's a terrific episode. Carole?
Well, I seem to be on a Bobby theme tonight, so I'm going to
Always good.
Another Bobby episode, Death's Door. So Bobby has previously been shot in the head, and he's been in the hospital and stuff. And then he dies, and he's a ghost. And we see him as a ghost for a while, and he's both helpful and, kicking to resist not being a ghost. But finally, a Reaper pins him down and is trying to get him to accept the fact that he's got to go. And we get a wonderful look finally at Bobby's backstory, why he's so adamant that he never would have children, despite the fact that this caused his wife enormous grief. Why it is that he has taken to the boys, that like they are his sons. We actually get Rufus, because Rufus is kind of being a spiritual guide a little bit, where he's appealing to Rufus for help as he's going from these memories to memories and going through doors, and he almost can't figure out why is he stuck in this one particular scene. And so we find that Bobby has a terrible secret that he's never shared with anyone, but to us, while it's terrible, it's completely understandable. But again, why he will never have children, and was adamant about that. And it's just, Jim Beaver has always given Bobby, in the smallest of scenes, Bobby has great depth. And here, where it's very Bobby centric, we get to see him play so much and show us so much about the character that it's really, really lovely. And it's a very poignant ending, because of course Bobby does finally, accept that he's got to go into the light, because he does not want to become an angry spirit or anything. And so he's losing his memories as he's taking this trip around them. And his final memory, he knows this is it. It's his last memory. And it's beautiful. It's Sam and Dean sitting on his couch, bickering about movie snacks as they get ready to watch a movie together like a family. And, and he's like, my sons grew up to be heroes. And I will never watch that scene without a tear. It's just so lovely. The whole episode is just beautifully crafted. And, Jim Beaver just knocks it out of the park.
Yep.
Ditto.
Yeah, absolutely ditto. Well, I'm going to throw a newer one in there, and this is from season 15, and that's Drag Me Away From You. This is a flashback episode where we see John Winchester, grade A parenting, drop young Sam and young Dean off at this hotel, and he'll be back. And there is there's a girl who's about young Dean's age and a boy who's around Sammy's age. And their mom runs the motel, but she's not around much. And so, you know, kids being kids, they kind of have the run of the hotel, except of course there's a monster and kids are going missing. And Dean is going to look into this and try to figure out what's going on with the monster, because he's a hunter, and hey, monsters that come after kids might come after Sammy. And so you've got this interplay between this episode in the past and them getting a call from the girl because her brother has passed away, and she thinks it's somehow related, that they thought they killed the monster way back when, but maybe they really didn't. And she's sure that her brother believed that the monster was still around. And so Dean's got to confront that. Maybe he didn't get it. And so we get to see this lovely flashback of young Sam and Dean, and then the nowadays Sam and Dean. And, you know, Sammy's got an SAT handbook hidden in his bag, and Dean's not real cool about that. And it was, I think, the last time we got to see a flashback in the series. And it was just a wonderful, again, Monster of the Week episode. Billy shows up a little bit at the end. We get a little bit of arc, but blink and you'll miss it. It's mostly a flashback and Monster of the Week. So it was a fun episode that was very welcome in an otherwise very tense final season. Elektra?
Season 9, Firstborn. We get to see the buddy duo of Dean and Crowley as they set out to find the first blade, because they want to kill a knight of hell, and they've figured out that the way you kill a knight of hell is you get the first blade. And they've got notes from John Winchester's journal that there's somebody at a location, they do a spell, and they figure out it's at some spot in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. So off the two of them toddle, and they go into this empty place, and they're looking around, and Crowley immediately senses something and goes, uh-oh, we got to get out of here. And Dean's like, what's the problem? And he's like, it's the beekeeper. He's the father of murder. And it turns out that this is in fact Cain. They have found Cain, because you can't have the first blade without the guy who wielded it. And Dean goes through an audition process and eventually agrees to take on the mark of Cain, without which he cannot wield the first blade. And so begins the journey in season 9 of Dean wielding the mark of Cain, leading to the fun bits of season 10. It's a really, really cool episode. Oh God, I cannot remember who plays Timothy
Amundsen.
Yeah, playing
Yeah.
Cain. He plays the hell out of it. He found peace with a wife, and then his wife was murdered, but he still abides by her wishes to not kill anyone until the demons come in, and then he decides, well, I'm really sorry, dear, but I've got to do this. And he shows just what the father of murder can do when he's motivated.
Mm-hmm.
There is lots and lots of demon killing. Lots of demon killing. And all sorts of cool stuff. And this is the first place where anyone refers to John's journal as the John Winchester Memorial Library. Crowley is the one who coins that term. I like it. I like how important it is in the mythos, because if Dean hadn't agreed to take on the mark of Cain, we wouldn't have gotten probably the arc from season 10 all the way to season 15. Mm-hmm. This is the episode that sets all of that in motion. Yeah. At least for me. Yeah. Your mileage may vary.
Carole, how about you?
Well, I'm going to bookend that then. with the end of Kane's story. The Executioner's Song, episode 14 in season 10. Kane is back on the playing field and he is killing anyone who has any of his blood in their bloodline. He is killing anybody who is a descendant of him in order to cleanse the world of his bloodline. And yes, Timothy Amundsen just is sensational as Kane. He has this deep, rich voice. And if you've never heard the man sing, he sings beautifully. Go watch, what is it? Gallivant, the musicals parody medieval show. Yeah, he just sings beautifully. And he has this mane of hair, just really spectacular. So he's off killing all these people. So of course they have to stop him. He ends up getting trapped in a bespelled barn, and Dean is going to have to be the one to do it because, hey, Dean has the mark of Cain, and he has the first blade. And they face off and they battle, and Dean does vanquish Cain, but it has taken a terrible, terrible toll on him. And when he comes down from that battle, he collapses into Sam's arms. You can see that he's absolutely drained. He's got, he is kind of looked really into a mirror to see that this is what he could ultimately become, because he's now bearing that mark and it's really ruling him. And it's not a pretty picture. So it's a very tense, very, great angst and struggle, really, really meaty episode. And by the end of it, Cain has left the premises.
Executioner's Song, the title of the episode comes from a book by Norman Mailer about Gary Gilmore, serial killer.
And they tie that in there because this is the one also where they mention about Sam's obsession with his, not obsession, but his interest in his hobby of serial killers.
Well, Nanette, that ties in perfectly with mine, which is going to be the last one for tonight, and that's No Exit. This is the H.H. Holmes episode where women are disappearing. There have been some murders. They can't figure out what's going on. Jo is fighting with Ellen about wanting to go off on her own and be a hunter. Ellen is basically, not while you're under my roof. And Jo says, well, then I won't be under your roof. That didn't work well. And so she shows up trying to work the same case Sam and Dean are working, and they end up stuck together, trying to figure out why these murders are happening in this building. And they finally realize that they are close to the prison where H.H. Holmes, Devil in the White City, the guy who killed maybe 200 or more people at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, died and is buried. And it's his ghost that is killing people. And there's some really scary moments there. He grabs Jo, and so they have to save Jo. Jo really does kind of hold her own as a fledgling hunter. And between the H.H. Holmes lore and the scary parts and the interplay between Jo and the boys, it's again another very satisfying Monster of the Week movie. Doesn't have a whole lot to do with major plot arcs, but it was a good romp and pretty scary.
I really enjoyed that they used like a real serial killer, like that. I just thought that was so interesting. I can't read about fictional serial killers, but I'll read and watch stuff about real ones.
Well, they did that with John Wayne Gacy later in, as well.
Right. I mean, so it was just, to me, I just really enjoyed how they did that. I thought when I don't even know what it is that he's trapped her in when he has her captive. I don't even know what that was, but it was terrifying.
Was it a coal furnace, Elektra? Was it like a coal bin for an old-fashioned furnace?
Well, they had her between the walls, theoretically. Was
Yeah.
that what was going on? Was why they couldn't get to her. I've got it on my wish list to go into Philly and try and figure out where they were theoretically.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
just,
it's
when
an hour drive, so.
when she's in, lying in that little narrow thing and she can't get out and stuff, that was super creepy. And I also thought the way they figured out how to trap him forever was also so clever.
Mhm.
This is one of those things where, like, man, Dean may not be the one who went to college, but the boy is sharp.
Mhm.
So that's really, and then of course there's a great prank they did in that one where
Mhm.
they doused Jared with cold water as he's like trying to come out of this little narrow tube with his cast.
Mhm.
So yeah, I totally agree about that. I think that's a really
I'm still annoyed that Dean seemed so sharp in the first couple of episodes. And they decided then that Sam was going to be the smart one, and they toned it down. Because especially in that first episode or two, he's talking about manipulating the recording from Dad, the message. And he never does that again. All of that is Sam.
Mhm.
And it was clearly a decision by the writers that, well, Sam was going to be the nerdy one and Dean was going to be the man of action.
Yeah.
And I don't see why they couldn't both have been smart.
I think that they always were, and Sam always tells Dean, you're just as smart. But I agree with you. That was kind of a dividing line with the writers. Well, folks, we have run through our time. We've got plenty more episodes to talk about, and we will be. But let's go around and tell everybody where we can find you online. Carole?
I am on Facebook, mostly a lot of times in Continual and in the TFWNC group. On Twitter, I am true_firesign10. On Instagram and AO3, I'm firesign10. And under the name Ellis Colton, my debut romance novella is now available. And you can find me on Facebook, and all my media links are there.
Okay. Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. You can find me at untilmidnight.com, and on Mastodon, I'm Elektra@wandering.shop.
Very good. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. Spell them right and you'll find me on all the social media sites. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. And I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you so much to our wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.